Ladies and gentlemen, it is that time again, once a year, with hundreds of games put in the database. It is time for the final rankings on Scouching's YouTube channel. Now, how this is going to work is we are going to go through all 5 tiers of my rankings, and we're just going to quickly go through the lowest ones and focus a lot more on the highest ones. I have been watching hockey all season long at all different levels, and there's tons and tons and tons of data that was a major factor into putting these rankings together. But there is definitely a lot more to the picture that we will show in video as well in this video. So I hope you enjoy. I hope you have fun. Let me know your takes in the comments. It was a lot of fun watching all these guys this season. And before we get into the rankings, I have to urge you, go to the YouTube channel, check out our draftathon stream that is scheduled for the Friday night and Saturday during the day. We are going to have a lot of fun watching the draft together. We are going to track every single draft pick we possibly can. There's tons of fun that's going to be happening during those couple of days. And definitely check out the link in the description where you'll see the light version of the full write-up of my rankings. You'll get the top 32, and with any level subscription at Scouching.ca, you will get access to the full rankings. You'll see full reports on every single player I have ranked, as opposed to reports on just the top 32. You will get the full rankings on the light version, but just not the write-ups on everybody in there. So check that out, and be sure not to miss it, but this video is meant as a bit of a companion piece to that. So we're gonna get started in Tier 5, and I'm gonna bang through these pretty quick here, but I wanted to start with, of the 82 names that I have ranked, a player who I've just loved all season long, and that's Anthony Alain-Samaké, who plays for the Sioux City Musketeers in the USHL. He is an extremely young defenseman in this year's draft class with really great mobility, really great skill, and I think he's one of these players with a lot of upside to go from here. He's pretty unrefined, especially on the puck in his own end at times, and his possession data that I tracked wasn't amazing. But at the end of the day, with Alain-Samaké, I think you are getting a really interesting long-term project you might be able to snag in the middle rounds. Moving up a little bit, you've got someone like Mason West, who everybody knows is a high school quarterback in Minnesota. He is long-term going to be committing to hockey, and I really do think that based on what I saw of him with Fargo, I don't really see a first-round level player here that a lot of other people do, but I do think that there's a nice, raw potential ability to really improve from here. He's lanky, he's tall, he's got some skill, there's a lot of good things going on here, so I could see him going quite a lot higher than where I have him ranked. I just go a lot more based off of what I've seen of the player, and I feel like there are other bigger, more skilled players that I think I've liked a little bit more than Mason West, but definitely an intriguing package to build on. The other name I wanted to flag here is Harry Nancy. Harry Nancy of the Owen Sound Attack has been one of my favorite players to watch all season this year. He is an incredibly hard-working forechecking forward. He is a player who did not shoot the puck a whole lot, but he set up a ton of shooting opportunities for the guys he plays with. Out of all the forwards I tracked this year, Harry Nancy might have been the one that led the most in terms of the percentage of teams' shot attempts that were created. About 50% of Owen Sound's offense came from a Harry Nancy shot assist, which is pretty insane. He's a really physical player, he forechecks well. I think there's a lot to like about Nancy. So he's a player that finds his way on my list here as a mid-round pick potentially. You will also note that this is the area of my list where the re-entry guys come in here. We've got a bunch of them back to back. Ludwig Johnson, Christian Epperson, Topias Huninen. The tier is led by Thomas Galvas. These are all players that I had ranked last year except for Epperson, and I think they all had really good seasons this year. In terms of team scouting, the players that I draft that I would put in my system, Johnson and Galvas are already there, as well as Huninen, and I think they all deserve to be looked at again in this year's NHL draft class. We've also got Sean Barnhill in here, who's a player I wanted to mention. Really tall, raw, lanky defenseman, but I have seen him throw some punishing hits this season. I've seen him go on some really impressive end-to-end rushes as well. I think he's only starting to scratch the surface of what he's capable of, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him be a guy a team kind of reaches on a little bit earlier. And right up near the top, we have one of my favorite players to watch in this year's draft class, and that is Tinus Koblar. Yes, the production wasn't really there, but in terms of size and skill and confidence and potential, I think there's tons here. He's got a July birthday, so he's very young for this draft class, and I think there's a long developmental runway that you could really do some damage with Koblar. There's also some guys who I think have an interesting ceiling, but I think a long way to get there here, and that's Matthew Gard, Henry Bruchtewitz, Hao Shi Wang, Max Senechka. There's a lot of guys here who have a lot of tools, but I don't think they've quite put it all together yet, and that I think embodies a lot of the players in this tier, as well as some guys that I think are just nice mid-round swings where you might get something out of them one day. And with that, we get to Tier 4. Now, Tier 4 does stretch into my first round, so we're already moving through this pretty quick, but there are a lot of really intriguing players in this range. I've been a huge fan of Cole Temple of the Everett Silvertips this year, even when he was playing with Regina. There's a great sense of two-way energy with Temple. He's a fantastic playmaker and forechecker, great pace in his game. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but I think long-term you could see a really interesting energy forward develop. Adam Banach is also in this tier, and he came into this season with a lot of hype, and I don't think he's quite lived up to it, but I think people have overcorrected a little bit. Banach is still a really dynamic and creative and skilled forward who just gets the job done a lot of the time. I think he's adapted to North American hockey a little bit better as the year has gone on. I still think that there is quite a bit of risk with him, and I think he will be a player that falls a little bit in the draft, but at the end of the day, I feel like he's going to fall too far and very quickly will become one of the most exciting players available in the draft. I know, Kayshawn Aitchison is in here in the 40s. Look, I respect what he brings to the game. He is a physical competitor. He has had some of the biggest individual hits in the entire draft class of this season. I get it. But for me with Aitchison, a lot of the things that I look for in a defenseman on a day-to-day basis was just really, really mixed. There may be some structural things that on a different team, a lot of the negatives might go away. Against the best competition he's played this year, I think the defensive issues are definitely a lot more major than advertised, but he does have a heck of a shot. He's a pretty good short-range passer. I think there's budding offensive instincts, and honestly, after rewatching his video for my Scouching report, there may be a world where he converts to being a pretty decent power winger at the NHL level, and I would not be against that. But for me, he's a player who I just didn't really see a tremendous amount of high-end value in this year, but at the end of the year, I think he did show a little bit better, and he found his way onto the list as a fringe first-round pick for me. Another interesting one in here is Daniil Prokhorov. Now, this is a big, lanky, really good shooting winger coming out of Russia. I think he's a very raw package with a bit of a limited game right now, but at the end of the day, I can see why teams love this guy. He's got really interesting tools. The numbers I've tracked on him are pretty good. It's just going to be a matter of, will it work against men? Is he going to be able to be a good puck distributor for other guys he plays with? Time will tell, but he's a guy that might go pretty high as well. We've got Theo Stokselius from Djurgården in here, and I think this is one of the more intriguing long-term bets in the entire draft. He is tall, he's lanky, he's very young, but the skill level for his size is really, really good. I think his skating really improved. I think he got a lot more comfortable when I saw him move away from the center position this season, and recently he went public that he has been through a fight with cancer, which would explain why he's so wiry right now, so who knows where that goes in the future. There's a lot of developmental room for a guy like Stokselius. He's a fringe first-round pick for me, and I really think there's a long but positive developmental road ahead for him. And here we also have some guys that I think are solid options for fringe NHL players here. Guys like Eddie Yenborg, Carter Amico is a pretty good defensive defenseman, maybe Will Moore as well. I think there's some good upside here. They play a physical style of play that I think NHL teams will really like, so we'll see where it goes with these guys, but these are guys that just barely missed out on my first round this year. Now we get into the top 32, and leading the way are a number of players that I think, similarly to what we just talked about, project as solid NHL players. They're still in that fourth tier, and that includes guys like Malcolm Spence and Cole McKinney, who I have just really enjoyed watching this season. They're physical, they're smart moving the puck up the ice. They may not be the highest end, skilled, offensive upside players, but I do think there's a lot of real nice foundational talent to build on here with both of those players. But also finishing off the fourth tier in the first round here for me are some really high skill, high ceiling, low floor guys here. That's Cam Schmidt, Cameron Reed, LJ Mooney, and Riker Lee. All four of these guys are guys who I just think bring so much fun and talent to this draft class, and if they're not day one picks, they become some of the most exciting options out there. I do believe that the injury problems LJ Mooney has faced this year are a little bit of a concern, but I cannot bet against him. He's dynamic, he's a wonderful passer, he's aggressive off the puck, one of the most physical players in this draft in my database. He's just a really wonderful player to watch, and I have nothing but the best of hopes for LJ Mooney's career, especially because of the injury problems he's had this year. Riker Lee has been one of the most exciting surprises for me this year as well. I think he's come a long way in his game. His motor has really improved. His skating is a little choppy and a little slow to gain some velocity, but the skill level, the creativity, the high-end plays he's made in the games I've seen are second to none, and this is a player that I think pretty quickly in this draft class becomes one of the most skilled, high-end offensive forwards available. Now, Cameron Schmidt is going to be a very interesting one to track. I don't expect him to be a day one draft pick. I just think there are a lot of real deal-breaker issues in Schmidt's game, but I will not bet against him long-term, and if he's a guy that goes deep into day two, I think all bets are off. I think he's a player that plays with intensity and ferocity. He's a high-paced kid with a great skating ability, a wicked finishing ability, and I think his playmaking ability has also improved improved over the course of this season. So Cameron Schmidt is a player that I think brings a really high ceiling. Maybe he's a good pro scorer, but just not in the NHL type floor. But at the end of the day, I think he's a guy that at some point in the draft becomes one of the most exciting players available and probably one of the best bets you could possibly make in the draft class. So for me, Schmidt tops out tier 4 at the 26th overall slot. Now here's where things get really interesting. We're entering the area of my third tier here with the 25th ranked player Cole Reshny. Reshny is a player I've really struggled with this year. If I had my way and hockey were just who I loved to watch the most, Cole Reshny may very well be in my top 10. I think Cole Reshny brings so much to the game that you need. He's aggressive, he's calm under pressure, a really gifted playmaker, a pretty good shooter in his own right. I thought he was fantastic in the playoffs for Victoria this year. He's a great interview, and I think there's tons of developmental headroom for Cole Reshny. He plays bigger than he is, and I'm not sure the pace of his game and the skating ability is really high-end enough to project very well to the NHL, but I'm not betting against him. I love watching this kid so much, and I hope nothing but the best for him. So he leads off this tier as a guy where I think talent-wise, he certainly has a bit of a claim to being as high as the top 10, but realistically speaking, I do think he is a riskier option in this tier. We've got Jackson Smith at 24 here, and I've really liked Jackson Smith's raw talent over the course of this season, but he has dropped precipitously on my list since the last time I put some work out a few months ago. Jackson Smith is a player that I think I just was waiting for over the course of the entire season to really become dominant and a more reliable player defensively, especially when it comes to tracking play along the boards defensively. He just got beat more often than I like. He made some really weird decisions moving the puck up the ice way too often for me. Shot decisions from the point that I just don't think lead to much offense at higher levels. But at the end of the day, he's still an incredibly gifted skater with great skill. And if you can kind of maybe let him be a little bit freer and play a little more offensively, there might be something really interesting here because he does have a physical edge to him. He's a tough one for me, and he comes in a little bit lower than everyone else has him. I was talking to someone the other day about him, and they said that he kind of reminds him of like what Jack Johnson was like. Jack Johnson was a really high NHL draft pick based on a lot of talent, but actually putting together good plays, making good decisions, driving offense in a responsible way, and really finishing the job defensively consistently were big issues. And I think I agree with that. Shane Van Sage at 23, he's big, he's heavy, but I really like how he plays the game. He plays physical, but smart. There's some skill there that I would love to nurture a little bit more, and he's a player that I have just loved watching all season long. Then we've got Radim Murtka. This one might surprise some people, but I do think Murtka is a player that just has more of a runway ahead to develop into what I think he could be than I think is led on. Murtka's a player who really relies on his reach to defend. He's a little bit clunky with his footwork, tracking play in close quarters and everything, so that's where he kind of lands a little bit later on my list. So I think for Murtka, I do really love the fact that he is a big right-hand shot skater who has some good, confident offensive moments, some really nice playmaking moments in the offensive zone as well. But as a complete package, I think he is a little bit of a project. But again, this tier is so close for me, and if he went in the top 10, I would not be surprised, even if I think it's a bit of a bet on his future. Now we have one of the most fun players in Justin Carbonneau. Now look, if the NHL draft was really an exercise in who the best one-on-one players are, Justin Carbonneau might be in the top 5. He is an incredibly gifted and skilled offensive forward with a great shot, really creative playmaking ability, on the fly, under pressure. There's lots of stuff he can do with the puck that I think project really well to the NHL. I just feel like when the puck is not on his stick, his game completely flips, and I know I'm not alone in thinking that. So if he can sort of be coached and nurtured in a way that he captures what he's capable of more often, plays a more physical game, takes better shot attempts for himself, works off of line mates a little bit better, I think there's tons of upside here. I have heard he could be a top 10 pick at the end of the year. If that's true, that would be crazy, but I can see where they're coming from. Rounding out the 20 to 32 range, we have Blake Fiddler. When he gets the puck in his own end, wheels up, gets moving up into the offensive zone, he's an exciting player to watch. I've seen Matthew Schaefer go end-to-end a few times this year, and it looks brilliant. I've seen Blake Fiddler go end-to-end this year a few times, and he also looks pretty brilliant doing that as well. Unfortunately, that's not how really hockey is played all the time, and Blake Fiddler off the puck I think does show really good mobility and really good stick-checking ability. He monitors gaps well, and I think he does a lot of things right. It's just about following through, finishing those checks, pinning guys against the boards a little bit more reliably, and I feel like Fiddler could project to be a really interesting middle pair defenseman in the NHL one day. In terms of the rest of my third tier, it stretches all the way to my 8th ranked player, but we'll start at number 19 with Roger McQueen. This one might be a little controversial to some. He was at the Combine, he said he was 100% healthy, but for me, I just wasn't sold by what I was seeing with McQueen this year. The skill level was at times good and at other times really unreliable. His skating ability off the puck is definitely noticeable. He finishes checks, but I feel like he's a little late to contact and it kind of takes him out of play a little bit too often. He's a player though that has remarkable raw tools. He's big, he's a pretty good skater for his size as well, he's physically intense, and I feel like he's one of these players that, even if he doesn't reach some sort of high offensive ceiling, could still become a pretty capable center in the NHL one day. It really just depends on your risk tolerance. For me, I find the injury history and what's going to happen to him developmentally over the next few years with regards to putting on weight on what already is a gigantic frame, it just spooks me a little bit. He still deserves a spot in this tier, but for me, he's a little lower than most because I just find there are other guys that I would just be willing to hedge my bets on instead of him, but he's still a really, really good player that brings some really interesting stuff to the game. I just was a little bit underwhelmed with what I saw at the beginning of the season, even in the playoffs, and the injuries do concern me a little bit. At 18, we've got Braden Coots. Now, Coots is a very intriguing player. I think in terms of a package of pace and skill and quickness, up the middle of the ice this year, there aren't that many other centers that I think bring talent like Coots. I do think he does have a bit of a ways to go if he's going to project as an offensive player at the higher levels, but his offensive play is a little bit underrated this year considering Seattle didn't actually score all that much. He was involved in 35% of their offense this year, which is pretty good. So for me, Coots is a guy who I think does have some offensive upside, but I think his lack of size, but skill and speed and smarts off the puck do lend him to more of like a Chandler Stevenson type projection, where he might not be the biggest guy on the ice, but you still like having him down the lineup because he just drives good results and does have some offensive ability as well. Now we get to Ben Kindle at 17. Ben Kindle has been one of my favorite players in the entire draft to watch. In terms of playmaking and passing, he was one of the best analytical projects for me this season. I feel like he's a player who got a lot worse on the ice when you took him away from the center position, from the open ice that he could use. It really took away from his benefits as a playmaker who kind of is able to stitch play from defenseman to center to winger. The big issue is that he's not the most physical guy, he's not very big, and he doesn't have this escape velocity that I think you need to project to the NHL as a player like Ben Kindle. Could he learn how to do that? Sure. But I do think his off-puck defense makes up for it quite a bit, but there is still quite a bit of situations in the NHL where you do need to be a little bit heavier on the puck, a little bit of a higher pace player, and not just this really deceptive, hyper-intelligent playmaker. I love him, I had him higher on my list for a long time this season, but other players I think just give me more certainty that they're going to turn into something really useful in the NHL, and not that Kindle can't, but I do think the issues in Kindle's game are a bit more of a limiting factor than some of the guys ahead of him. At 16, we have Logan Hensler. Now, Hensler was a guy who I think just got better and better over the course of the season, especially after coming back from the World Juniors. I'll admit he wasn't amazing there, but I think at the end of the day with him, you're getting a really, really intriguing right-hand shot defenseman. Really mobile, does a lot of things pretty well. He's got some really impressive offensive zone moments that I've seen as well. Skilled, evasive, keeps things pretty safe and dependable on the puck in the defensive end. Off the puck defensively, I think there could be some improvements here and there. Skating improvements, physicality, strength, all those things. I would like to see that improve. But other than that, Hensler's a really intriguing package. I think there's offensive upside to build on too, so we'll see what happens with him. At 15, we have one that also might ruffle some feathers, and that's Caleb Desnoyers. Now, Desnoyers has grown on me over the course of the season, I will fully admit. Yes, he was injured apparently with 2 injured wrists over the course of the whole season, but I don't think it automatically makes him one of the best players in the draft, and we just didn't see his best this year. I do think though that Desnoyers brings a lot to the game that is really advantageous. He gets the puck in the offensive zone, his playmaking timing, his vision of the ice and ability to get the puck to line mates in scary spots is really, really good. If I had to pick a player who I could give the puck to in the offensive zone and trust to create an offensive opportunity, he might be in the top 5 of this year's draft class, at the very least top 10 for me. I do just wonder about how his 200-foot game will translate, how good of a center in the NHL he will be. There is interesting upside here. He's grown on me over the course of the season, and again, this range to me is so close, but the talk about Desnoyers being a top 5 pick this year is a little bit too much for me, but But back half of the top 10, if you want an offensive-leaning guy who has some decent defensive abilities, but in my opinion may lack the skill and the pace of play outside the offensive zone that I personally look for, Dane Wyatt could be a really good option. At number 14, I didn't think this one would turn out to be that controversial at the end of the day, but we've got Jake O'Brien. Jake O'Brien is a player who I've liked watching all year, but I don't really know where this sort of top 10 conversation is coming from right away. I do believe that I buy into the narrative that he's very, very thin for his size, still pretty young, and there's lots of developmental headroom to go from here. But I just didn't really see that really high-end 200-foot impact player that I think I like in an NHL draft class. That said, he does have some really projectable qualities to him. His ability to invite pressure, work off of it, make plays around the offensive zone, and find guys in transition. He's really good at all of those things. So I think there is a lot of upside here for O'Brien, and I could very easily see him being a perfectly reasonable option in the back half of the top 10, certainly in the early teens. I feel like there's a little bit of a ways to go, and I feel like with the skill, and again, similar to Dane Wyatt, the skating and skill combination is a little bit limiting of his upside. All right, now we're at 13, and it's Brady Martin time. Brady Martin is a guy who it seems like, even since I locked in my rankings yesterday, is gonna go top 5. I get it. Brady Martin is physical, he's intense, he's a pretty good passer outside the offensive zone, and in the offensive zone, I should say. Really good playmaker, knows where his line mates are, and if he keeps his game really simple, he can be really, really effective. I think things fall apart a little bit when he really tries to push the pace of play up the ice, play with a lot of skill in transition. It just isn't really his forte, but that's okay. If he plays more of a dump and chase, heavy physical style, I think he could be a very, very useful NHL player. I see a bit of a bigger Vincent Trocheck maybe, a better playmaking version of a Casey Cizikas here. I like what he brings to the game, and he's going to be a valuable part of a really good NHL team. Is he worth a top 5 pick? In this year's class, maybe, I guess. In retrospect, we might see that, but I just feel like the ceiling in his game right now is a little bit limited. I've really grown to like what I see out of him. He had a really good final part of the year, so it's just going to be a matter of what you say no to in this year's NHL draft, but still a good player, and I've liked him. Let's continue the ranking at number 12 and look at Carter Bear. Now, Carter Bear is a very intriguing mix of power and skill and energy in his game that I think project really well. I will say, though, the difference between the players in this range from 8 to 15 is so slim to me. It is really, really small and negligible, but Carter Bear does bring an energy to his game that I think separates him just a little bit. The Achilles injury is a bit of a concern, but it doesn't worry me too much with modern medicine and how amazing it is. And for me with Carter Bear, I think the upside is just undeniable. He might not be the play driver everybody wants, but I think that outside of an Anton Frondel, he might be one of the better complementary options in an offensive lineup for an NHL team one day. All right, now we're getting spicy here, all right? But number 11, we're going with the one off the board. Every year there seems to be a guy that I just love and have probably way too high, but I don't care. Some of this is about having some fun. We're putting Michael Sverchek here. Now, Sverchek is a player who played at the SHL level this year, which very few players did for an extended period of time, but he certainly did, on a team that went to the SHL finals. So they're no slouch, and I feel like coaches in Europe find all the excuses in the world not to play young players for multiple minutes at a time, and Sverchek was a solid third-line player for his pro team for a long stretch this year. Why? Because he is one of the most energetic off-puck forwards available in this draft class. He is so fast and so aggressive and so hard on the puck and relentless. He also is a pretty skilled player as well, and I think he's only beginning to sort of scratch the surface of what he's capable of in the SHL in that regard. Granted, he will need to learn how to slow down his game a little bit, be a little bit stronger on the puck, work off of line mates a little bit better than he does, but at the very least, we're talking about guys with a really strong floor in this range. And yeah, Sverchek's not the biggest guy in the world, but with the speed, skill, tenacity, off-puck energy, he belongs in this range. I've really tried to go back and find reasons to put him lower than other guys, and I keep going back to the thought of what if you took a Brady Martin or a Jake O'Brien or a Logan Hensler and put them in the SHL? What kind of results would you get? I don't think they would be as defensively impactful as Sverchek, with as much offensive skill on the side that really came out at the junior level, but not so much at the pro level. I probably have him too high, I will fully admit that, that, but I think he is great, and I really would encourage you to watch the Scouching report to see exactly why that is, because I think if you watch this kid a lot at the pro level in Sweden, you will see what he's capable of too. Here we have another one, another hot take, but again, we're talking about NHL players here, and we got Bill Zana here at 10, and now old Bill, not only does he have a great name, just like me, I think that he's a player who just projects so well to the NHL. The energy in his game, the forechecking ability, his ability to stop up and create gaps and move the puck up the ice and play at a really high pace of play. At the moment of recording, we're all watching the Florida Panthers in the Stanley Cup Final. He kind of plays like a Florida Panther. Hard on forechecks, gets behind defenses really well, moves the puck pretty well as well in small area passing moments, but he also has some offensive upside as well. He's physical, he's intense, he does so at a high pace of play, and I think that relative to the guys a little bit behind him, that pace of play advantage and that ability to chain things together at that higher pace of play gives him a little bit of an advantage, even if I don't see him at all really likely to be a top 6 center in the NHL. A really good bottom 6 center, I absolutely could see. One of the last two names in this tier for me is Lyndon Lakovic at number 9. Lakovic is just such a smart kid. We've met him. He's a really tactically minded guy. I think he's a player with huge amounts of skill and huge amounts of upside, but there is risk in his profile. He does need to bring more off the puck for sure. He relies on his reach, he stops moving his feet. He's a very different player when the puck is on his stick. He's evasive, he's creative, he's intelligent, he's resistant under pressure. He does a really good job moving the puck to scoring areas and just generating offense over and over again on a team that really struggled to score goals this year. In fact, out of all of the players in my entire rankings, he's the only one that got to 45% involvement in his team's offense in the games that he played. Michael Misa was at 43.5%, just for the record. And so for me with Lakovic, the offensive tools are obvious, and I feel like if he's already this good as he is now, with the improvements I think he needs to make and probably will make in the next little while, there's only upwards trajectory for him, I believe, in the future. I know that he's smart enough to know that these are things that he needs to work on, and I think he's going to do what it takes to understand his faults and get over them and become the player he can be. Bit of a risky floor, but I do think he'll figure it out. This is one of the last hot takes of the list, so, leave your comments in the comments section, please. But Eric Nilsson comes in at number 8. Over the course of this season, I just kept watching him and all of the guys I have slightly below him, and I go, why would I put Nilsson behind these guys, especially projecting out into the future with him? I don't think he's going to be an elite offensive producer, and he really needs to work on his scoring instincts and ability to get to the net. But I just look at the speed he plays with, the physicality, and how good he is at passing the puck around the ice and just making everyone else he plays with look a lot better. There's not that many of those in this year's draft class. I think there's a lot of growth potential. He's pretty light on his feet, and I think that will change over the next little while. He's pretty lanky, and that will change over the next little while. In fact, I believe he has one of the lowest BMIs of anyone likely to go in the first round this year. So at the end of the day, I think with Nilsson, you're betting on long-term development. I understand there's a lot of risk with him. Nilsson will probably be available quite a bit later than this, but in terms of the playmaking, the skill level, the energy, it just comes together in such a great combination that if he played in North America this year, I feel like people would be a lot higher on him. I feel like he's been excellent in every international tournament he's played in, and he's just a guy who generates great results. One of the best analytical cases I've studied this year, outside of scoring chances on his own, which I think is a big gap, but still a great player who I think brings tons to the game. All right, we are jumping up a tier to my second group this year, and it starts with Anton Frondell at number 7. Anton Frondell might have the strongest floor out of anyone in this draft that isn't Matthew Schaefer or probably Michael Misa. Really physical. I think he's a great off-puck player, both at the defensive side and the offensive end of the ice. I do think that the skating and skill combination is a big limitation on him, and I'm not sure I would be seeing him as a center in the NHL one day, but I do believe that he will be an excellent complementary winger in the NHL. You could put him with some of the best players on your team. He'll do the dirty work. He can work off of them, off the puck, and make scoring chances for himself. He just gets the job done almost every single time I see him step on the ice. He's gotten a lot better, I think, too, as the year has gone on, more comfortable at the men's level, and I do think there's a really bright future ahead for Mr. Frondell. He makes players he plays with better a lot of the time and makes their lives easier, and that to me is valuable. At number 6, we've got Porter Martone of the Brampton Steelheads. I've been watching this kid for years, and I'm so happy to see him get drafted by an NHL team this year. Brilliant playmaker with really good size. He exudes leadership on the ice. He wears a letter for multiple reasons in Brampton at his age. He is a physical player, but I do think that the increased skating ability and pace of play in his game should make that better. He's got a really great great shot, but the playmaking vision, the pass timing, doing so in quick succession, the one-touch passes, he does a really good job working around maybe the lack of pace of play that he has and maybe not being the fastest skater around. But at the end of the day, I think that those are things that I know that he knows he needs to work on, and I think those are things that will improve over the next little while. So Porter Martone slots in at number 6. All right, we got another steamy one here. I know this one is confusing some folks, but I don't care. Cullen Potter comes in at number 5. He's listed as a winger. He played center all season long, so let's just get that out of the way. He played on a team where his line mates were not the quality that James Hagens got to play with this year. Instead of 2 first-round picks, he was playing with a bunch of guys who probably are AHL, ECHL guys, and he still outscored a guy like James Hagens by a couple of goals this year in fewer games. He's one of the youngest players in NCAA hockey this year, and I don't think he looked out of place at all. One of the best skaters, one of the highest pace of play in this entire draft class. I think Potter brings a great package to build on. Not the biggest guy in the world. Off-puck defending does need a little bit of work, but for a guy playing NCAA hockey as a center on a team that was nationally ranked in the NCHC this year, and I have to give him credit for taking on that challenge in this season. Let's take Logan Cooley, for example, a few years ago and transplant him into the NCAA playing for Minnesota in the year he was drafted. Does he perform astoundingly well? Maybe, but I'm not so sure based on what I saw of him in his draft year. But if you didn't draft him where he went in that draft, you might look back and go, you wish you did. With Cullen Potter, there is a high-end pace of play, skill level. I think at the under 18s, he looked amazing, although he did showcase some of the downsides. He is a player who will look off some pretty easy passing options in favor of carrying the puck himself, which drove me a little nuts this year. But to me, I would just want to coach him because the upside is huge. And so I feel like Cullen Potter, again, I bet on upside. And I think in this year's draft class pretty quickly, he becomes one of the most exciting options in this draft, even through the faults that he has. And I feel like if he was playing junior hockey this year, people would be a lot higher on him than they are now. Moving on to number 4, we've got Victor Eklund. And this might be a little bit of a hot take to people, but I don't care. Eklund has one of the best motors in the draft this year. He's a great skater. He's fast. He's aggressive. He's a really good shooter, although I would love for him to shoot from better places more often, but he's got a wicked shot that he can deploy at will. He is a player, though, that you win with. He was playing big minutes in the Hockey Allsvenskan playoffs towards the end when they were fighting for promotion. Anton Frondell kind of wasn't, but Victor Eklund earned those minutes. He's physical, he's intense, he drives unbelievable possession results at that level, really efficient play at both sides of the puck. I just have really liked what Victor Eklund brings to the table. I can't imagine he's a player that will not go later than he should. Every game I watch him, he brings joy to the ice, and I think that no matter what competition he's facing, he will move heaven and earth to win a hockey game. Rounding out this tier, we're starting off the top 3 with James Hagens. This is where he has been almost all season for me. The back half of James Hagens' season, especially since his really excellent World Junior Championship, really showed, I think, a different side of him. He became more physical, more comfortable at higher and lower paces of play. One of the best playmakers in this draft. He's slippery, he's skilled, he's just a lot of fun to watch. He is not without his flaws. He is small, but I do think he wrestles off pressure better than you would expect, and I do think that his shooting tendencies are mixed. I would like to see him shooting the puck more, creating more opportunities to get the puck on net for himself, get to better scoring areas, drive the net off the puck a little bit more, but those are things I think you can work out. I also felt that the chemistry between him and Gabe Perreault and Ryan Leonard was a little bit questionable based on how he likes to play the game, but when you take him and put him with a guy like Teddy Stiga and guys like Andre Gasso at times this year that I saw, I think that group really complemented each other really well in the games I saw. I think Hagens has a ton of upside here. I think you can buy low on what people perceive his value to be because he did have such a good World Junior, and people are all talking about guys who were at the under 18 and were pretty good there. In Frondell's case, people are talking about how disappointing he was at the under 18s. So don't forget about James Hagens, and I know he has been walking around telling people not to forget about him. So I'm not betting against the skill. I'm not betting against the playmaking ability, the energy, the speed, and the growing physicality. Super talented player who I think might get drafted too late if he's a guy that starts to slip a little bit in this draft. And so we get to the top 2. And at number 2, nothing has changed for me all season long. It's Michael Misa. His playoff, he was fighting an injury. He didn't look particularly awesome in that series that I saw against Erie. But going back and doing the scouting report on him and seeing what he is capable of, Oh my God, what a player. Incredibly creative, incredibly smart, ridiculous pass timing, adapting to pressure and working off of opponents is elite level stuff. Brilliant scorer. You do not score a goal per game just by being a really good shooter. I wouldn't categorize Michael Misa as a pure shooter in this year's draft class. He goes to the net. He finds space. He finds the open net really well. He puts the puck in the net really well. He gets tips. He's a rebound threat. He just is an incredible goal scorer all around, and he does have a pretty good shot. That said, though, the hallmark of his game is playmaking. He is just efficient, marches the puck up the ice, works off of line mates really well, makes himself a passing target really well, surgically takes apart defensive structures over and over and over again, is an excellent forechecker, and I think his stride is more explosive than he leads on when you watch him play. He just covers ice so well, gallops up the ice really effectively, and I think in terms of driving offensive results, yeah, he might not be the most physical guy out there. I think you would be remiss if you overlooked him because of that, because pretty much every other area of the game, he has been excellent. And with number one, the least surprising thing you can probably think of, it is Matthew Schaefer time. Now, I literally at the day of recording this did my Matthew Schaefer Scouching report, and I didn't have time to get a full sample on him, but I had more than enough to go off of because holy crap, what a hockey player. This guy gets up and down the ice better than almost anybody in this draft, in my opinion. Efficient skater, not a small player, and he covers ice extremely well. He back checks effectively. He's a brilliant defender, in my opinion, covering ice really well, stick checking well, playing a smart, calculated defensive style that I think more old school people might overlook a little bit, but to me, it's just really efficient. He is probably one of the best rush offense defensemen that I have seen in the last few years, jumping into the rush with ease, almost to a fault, and I would say that's probably the only area that I would really raise as a flag, is that he pushes for offense a little bit when he probably shouldn't, but nonetheless, at the end of the day, you're still getting an absolutely amazing offensive defenseman here. Really skilled, really evasive, just a really gifted playmaker as well, drives to the net really well, really built in that Zach Werenski, Dougie Hamilton type vibe where they drive offensive chances themselves, and with the right system and the right coach around them, all bets are off. You could be looking at a really intriguing player who just has his own style of play. And with that, we're done. Thank you so much for joining me. This season honestly has been a real treat in a way. There are a lot of players here that very little separates them from another one. They bring a lot of interesting talents at their floor. They bring some interesting upside in many areas. And I think there are a lot of players in this draft who will find their way onto an NHL roster at some point doing something. I don't see a whole lot of really high-end talent I'd be willing to put a lot of money on, betting to play in a top six, be an all-star, play on your top line. But I do think there are players here that if they hit their ceilings and really come along well, could be potential game changers for an NHL team. There are some really interesting storylines with regards to injuries and sicknesses that really could affect things moving forward and make it a very interesting draft class. So thank you very much for joining me along this ride, whether you're just watching this or you've been watching the streams all year or you watch all the reports. After hundreds and hundreds of games watched this year, a bajillion data points logged in my database here. Thank you so much for watching, no matter how much you helped us out. Definitely like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you really like what we do, you can check out Scouching.ca and get yourself a subscription. It really helps us out directly and helps fund our work, and you get access to all kinds of cool stuff like our Discord server, plenty of really cool data visualization tools, an early head start on the 2026 NHL draft, and plenty of other cool stuff you can check out over there at Scouching.ca. And with that, we are off to the draft. So join me at the Scouching Draftathon for 2025. It's so good to be back, to be doing streams through the first round and through day 2. We've got special guests coming. We're going to have some fun. It's going to be great. We'll see you then. Go to the channel, set your reminders, and we'll see you then.